Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah. And Hannah and I are both manifestors in human design. And that's how we've come together to create this podcast, Led by Life. We met through a human design workshop and both kind of just realized we're really into having more conversations around the system of human design, experiences in life, the gene keys, just a real fascination for the human experience. So we've decided to come together, and each episode we bring to you a new gene key and its respective parts within the human design charts and how it relates to the both of us and our experiences with it. So today we're on gene key 14, gate 14. And we're just going to jump right into it because Hannah and I began sort of with a little catch up and then realize, like, again, how synchronistic almost it is to this energy that we've been exploring for a little bit now of gene key 14. So, yeah, I mean, we were talking about, we were doing our check-ins that we do with one another, and you were sharing with me how right now you're sort of just feeling like uninspired and not knowing like where the rest of the year is going to take you, or like, yeah. And then you were saying how somebody asked you about the nail trail and having that YouTube channel and really being like so excited to get up and provide this nail art content and not really knowing where it would go, but just kind of doing it. And that's what I just know from everything you've shared with me about it.
Yeah, so the Nail Trail was this brand that I created almost 15 years ago. Like, it feels like a lifetime ago. And it started out of just this interest in nail art, or well, not even really nail art. It was just interest in nail polish. And then I started playing around and teaching myself how to do nail art. And then it just kind of had a life of its own. It just took off. And then I had years where I was so passionate about creating nail art content, and it became bigger than I ever could have imagined. And then inevitably over time, I kind of lost that passion because there were other things that I wanted to create and explore. And we've talked about this a fair bit on the podcast already, about all the different creative ventures that I've been on, the different ventures and journeys that I've been on creatively. And I do have the first gene key, or the first gate in human design, defined in my chart, and it's very prominent in my chart. It's actually kind of like my driving force is to create and to express myself creatively. And so it's really nice to reflect back on that time in my life. But I was saying to Rafa before, I feel like I haven't felt that passion ever since the nail trail, ever since I had that initiation, I suppose it was, the thing that I created as a manifestor. And it really did kind of set off this initiation of nail art, because it wasn't a big thing back then. It was, I was one of the first people creating this kind of content online on YouTube and on Instagram. And so it makes sense now that I know more about my human design, that it was this kind of creative initiation. But yeah, I just haven't felt that passionate ever since. And it's funny because the first gene key is in the same, what's it called again? Codon ring, as the 14th. So there's the two gene keys in this codon ring of fire, the 1 and the 14. So it's interesting. And it's also in the same circuit, if I'm correct. It's in the individual circuit. So it makes its way from the sacral. This is where we find the 14 in the sacral, up into the G center. And then the first gate goes from the G center into the throat. And I have that full channel, the 1-8. And it's also interesting because the 14 is the programming partner of the 8. So there's kind of these different like energies at play here. And yeah, it just feels quite synchronistic that we're exploring this today. And I've been feeling just this like lack of passion, lack of drive and motivation, and like I'm just waiting for the next thing to come along, and I have no idea what that really is. I have glimpses and I have inklings of what it could look like, but I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what I was sharing with you was like when Hannah was telling me how she's been feeling and around this stuff, I like the first thing that came to me was like the practical part of this. And what I mean by that is because it's like a question I've been working with a lot, whether myself or with others. And it's like, what is the most smallest way that I can like create that for myself in the smallest, on the smallest level? Like it's, and for me, sometimes that means just like in that day or in that block of time, I guess, that I would have, and to like create a door that would lead me towards more of like what I want to feel or what do I want to experience. And so I was sharing with you that like lately for me, it's been going back to doing more writing in like a morning pages style where I just set a timer. I know morning pages is like more like first thing in the morning and you write 3 pages and you let it rip. And my routine's a little different. So I've adopted this way of setting a timer for 30 minutes instead. And so I set a timer for 30 minutes and I'll just write and I'll just like see where it goes. And I did that for 6 weeks in the beginning of the year. And I mean, so much has transpired since then, obviously. But I've been thinking about this same thing too, is kind of like, I don't really know like what the next thing is. And for me, just personally, like I don't really need to know the next thing because so much has changed and I'm trying to settle in with things kind of just being as they are. But I have noticed lately that I'll be thinking, I'll have this feeling like I feel like I have to create something. And I don't necessarily know like where that's coming from, but it just feels like not that what I'm doing isn't enough. Maybe it like there's this something that's sort of saying to me like what I'm doing isn't enough, but I know it is. And at the same time, I want to create something, and yet I know that like I don't need to. So it's like these voices essentially are like going back and forth. And I feel like it's because for the last 3 years, I've had this mentality of like being, you know, being self-employed, how money fits into that, like into entrepreneurship and like how you can survive essentially in some ways. And I had this mentality of like having to figure out like, okay, what am I going to create so that I can get it out there, and then hopefully that can be something that funnels my business or helps me market myself. And I mean, I've just like you and I have kind of come last week to these stories around money, and the 14 key is like the 14th, sorry, is a lot about prosperity and dreams and wealth and what did you say, taking passionate action?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it feels to me because it is a sacral energy. It's very like lit up by doing what it loves, taking action on what it loves. And so, well, I have a couple of, did you have anything else you wanted to share? Because I have a couple of, I suppose, questions or thoughts.
Well, go for it, because I honestly was wondering, okay, like where could this go? You can go in so many directions.
So first of all, I'll just share a few reflections and then we can talk about it. But like this feeling of pressure, that's what I'm getting, this feeling of pressure. Like there's something that wants to be created and I just don't know what that is. And it's moved from mental pressure, which I was experiencing for a long time, for months. I was experiencing this mental pressure, and I do have the channel 6447, which is like a mental pressure. Sorry, I'm a little unwell at the moment, so my voice is a bit croaky. But it's kind of moved more recently into, it does feel a little bit like a sacral pressure. And I say that with someone who has an undefined sacral as a manifestor, like you, and also someone who has a completely open sacral. I don't have any gates or any energies defined in the sacral center. So I've had to do a lot of deconditioning, and I think that there's still a lot of work there to be done, decondition my sacral, because I do still feel this pressure, which must be conditioning. I don't know where else it's coming from. It's not coming from me, but I feel this pressure to like do stuff, to be doing things. And I find that I really struggle with feeling worthy, feeling like a sense of worth when I am not doing stuff, when I'm resting, when I'm in these periods of feeling uninspired. I'm sure it's connected to the first gate as well, but yeah, I really struggle when I feel like I'm not actually taking action. And I am at a place where I only want to take action when I'm feeling really like passionate and when it's really aligned. I don't really want to invest my energy into things that are misaligned anymore, because I've done that so much in the past. So that's kind of like where I'm at the moment. And I was wondering if you feel that same sort of pressure. And then another observation is that we both have the second line, which does, they say the second line gets called out, like it will receive, I've heard it referred to receiving many calls in its lifetime, but I think Nikki, our teacher, said that there's really like one call, one calling that the second line gets. Still yet to kind of understand that fully. But I wonder if there's also just this feeling of like waiting for that calling to come for both of us. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, have you ever felt that kind of passion and drive that I was talking about before, like where there's something and you just feel like so lit up and so excited, and you just wake up in the morning with so much energy? And I mean, it's hard for me to know, because back then I didn't know anything about human design. I didn't really know anything about self-discovery. And I mean, I've always been a very introspective person, but I wasn't on that path at that stage of my life when I created the nail trail. It was very much just me creating something that I was excited to create, that I was passionate about, that people loved, that people wanted to see. Like it was really just coming out of me in a really natural way. Again, the second line having these natural talents and natural gifts that are just inherent. I suppose that was kind of called out of me. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't felt that since. And I'm wondering if you've ever felt that, or if you feel like that's something that you know is there, but it just hasn't happened yet. Lots of questions and observations for you.
So many different things, because I've been, I would say in the last year, in the last 2 years. Okay, 3 years, more or less. I've been really excited to get up and do my morning routine. It goes back to practical, right? Because for me, I have what do you call, not only is the 5th gate my sun gate, which is about rhythms and cycles and routine, and then actually where does the 5th meet? Does it meet with the 15th? And the 15th is, and you have the 15th, and it's actually the exact opposite. So sometimes people with the 15 can get up and do something different every day, and that's correct for them. And they don't see how people can sometimes be with the same routine. I don't know if that's for you, but whatever, I'm getting off track. The point is that for me, when I had more time in a day, I wasn't working necessarily I wasn't working a 9 to 5. I didn't have like structured work hours. I'd have sessions with people here and there. I worked from home. And looking back now, I realized like when I was getting into that, I felt that's when I probably would feel the most excited. I'd get so excited to wake up in the morning, go meditate, from there, jump into my workout, whether it was like a run or a workout in the garage, or I'd go to the gym and I'd like listen to music, and then I'd come home and I'd maybe journal some, or I'd read some, or I'd lay in bed. Maybe I had a session that day, maybe I didn't. And like in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, around that time, I was still so like discontent with other things in my life, but I felt so excited to like get up and like do those things again and just really be with myself. And lately it's not that way. Clearly my life's completely changed, and now I do work 5 days a week and an 8-hour workday. But like what I was telling Hannah is, so for me, I've to like be with this feeling that I know that like there's something that I want to create, and I don't know what it is or how it's going to look or where is it going to come from, because essentially now like the majority of my week is set up. I still do what I love, but there's a lot of, I mean, I spend a lot of other time doing parts of the job that aren't just meeting one-on-one or in a group session with other people. And I think I've been kind of like beating myself up about that. I'm like, maybe I'm going backwards. Maybe this isn't really the way. And I feel like there's something that I'm here to create. Like something keeps telling me this. So for me, like one way that I've kind of like have tried to get, like I said, create that door that I don't know where it's going to lead me, is just to go back to writing, to go back to like sitting down, however often it is, and kind of just let like my stream of consciousness go for 30 minutes. And I don't know where that's going to go. And I came across a post recently that was like, somebody was sharing how like they get a lot of like their channeling through nature. Like a lot of their content comes through in the channeling that they experience while they're in nature. And while I would love to be able to do that, I like right now I don't have that availability. I mean, I can set time for it on certain days and this and that. But if I wait for that to happen, I feel like I'm gonna just, I don't know, I'm getting tongue tied now, but it's like, it's like, it feels like there would be more obstacles that I'd have to like really set time. Whereas again, back to like, for me, the smallest level of getting into this feeling of taking like passionate action or aligned action is to, be with my meditation practice, or now also doing this morning pages style of writing as often as I can, because I just don't know. And I have felt that pressure. And the other thing that kind of came to me when you were sharing was like, I feel like it's uncomfortable. Like there's this uncomfortableness that you're experiencing in not having necessarily like something that you're inspired by, and not knowing what action to take, or any one of those things. And that, like, I feel like that could be fueling, this undefined, completely open sacral of being it's a cliche, but it's like being uncomfortable in the uncomfortableness.
Yeah, it's this weird, is it dichotomy? Is that the word I'm looking for? Like, because I do have this ability to like step into the unknown. I really do. Like I'm very open to making changes. I'm very open to like trying new things and kind of reinventing myself and my life. That doesn't feel uncomfortable or scary to me. But at the same time, there is this really uncomfortable feeling of not having that passion or not having that something that's driving me forward or giving me direction or a sense of purpose in life right now. It is uncomfortable. It's like, on the one hand, I get excited by the unknown, but on the other hand, I'm just like so eager to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like at all that any of this pressure might be coming from money, like from the financial aspect of life?
Uh, that's a good question. I think when I get caught up in the mental stories, yes,
Mhm.
because my defined head centers want to know how, like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to make this work? How are things going to happen? But I think the pressure is actually coming from my root. So I have an undefined root, but I have a lot of gates coming out of my root. I think it's the same for you, right? I think you've got
Mhm.
like a lot of gates coming out of your root, but an undefined root center. So it's kind of this pressure in a way. And like I do have a lot of drive in me, but I don't have the energy to sustain that drive because of that open sacral center. And then that just kind of poses the question, like, we were designed exactly the way we were designed. How do we learn to embrace these parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable or are conflicting? And are they uncomfortable because they're coming from us, or are they uncomfortable because of the society we live in? That we look around and we see all these people taking action and we feel like there's something wrong with us because we don't have that ability to be consistently taking action. It's just another question that's coming to me, like, how do we learn to harness the perfect energy that we were created with, because like that's the way we were created, while also letting go of all of the conditioning that we've received and all of the outside noise, so that we can access this energy in a pure state, because we just get to taste it. It's not
Yeah.
consistent with us, but yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's like, does anybody ever really work with all of the energy perfectly?
Well, it's all just a experiment, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess because I think of like two words came to me, and that was like harmony and balance.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
laughing because
Why you love it?
that's like part of, well, I would say part of both of our journeys, but um, I've been learning a little bit more about my astrology, and I'm a Libra sun sign, and it's all about harmony and balance. And so it's just been something that I've been reflecting on a lot recently. What does that mean to you? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Well, so like over the weekend, it was the first weekend where I really didn't have anything that I felt like I needed to do. Since we've made this transition, since we've been like adjusting into San Diego and kind of getting our house in order, and like just a rhythm and routine with different schedules, different jobs, different environment, and all of that. This past weekend was like the first weekend where I was like, wow, I don't have anything to do. And I was so excited. And something that I used to do is I would say, okay, like Saturdays, I'm not going to make any plan. I just know that I'm going to get up and I'm probably going to want to do the things that I like to do in the morning, my morning routine. And then I'm just going to see where the day goes. And I can't tell you how often it was like I would just feel this compulsion to make a plan, to do something. And it's something that I worked with Nikki a little bit. And that was something, you know, she said, she's like, can you just watch the compulsion of wanting to fill your time? Because I would go and I would do these things, and then I'd be like, why'd I do these things? I really didn't want to do any of this. And so I would really have to like practice with just, okay, I said I wasn't going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. And it would be uncomfortable. Sometimes I'd pick up my phone to go do that habit of like, oh, let me make this plan. And I'd have to stop midway and just be like, do I really want to do this right now? I don't think so. I'd delete the text and I'd sit back down and be like, all right, well, what now? So anyway, so this past weekend I didn't have anything to do and I was like really excited for it. And I actually, like, it went really well. Like it comes back to me to like feeling like there's something I have to do. There was nothing I had to do. I know what I wanted to do and I did those things. And then I really just like rested, really just like kind of laid on the couch for some of it. And then some of it, I actually went out and I explored a little bit. And then it's funny because at the end of the weekend, I'm sitting on the couch and I was telling Travis, I was like, you know, this whole time I haven't really felt like I'm forgetting something, because like for weeks now, and I don't know, maybe it's just part of a transition like this, like a big move or something with everything, that I have felt at the end of my days where I'm forgetting something. It's just this sensation I have, like something's missing.
Like something to do.
Something to do, or like I forgot something, or the other day I was driving and I was like, have I forgotten anybody's birthday lately? Like, I don't know. Like, I know I'm here and I know I'm present, but it almost feels like I'm literally in a whole nother world. I mean, in some way, I very well am. But anyway, and so to me, that's really what it means. It's this kind of like ebb and flow where I've learned, for me, I'll go really hard and I'll do a lot of things. And then there'll come a time where I don't do anything, like nothing.
And you feel like you've been able to really learn how to do that?
Yeah. I mean, again, like a lot of practice in the last 3 years. And taking like the aligned action has been something that I've just still am working with. But that's what it is for me. Like there's some, and I feel like that's how the manifestor energy works, is that you go through these highs and these lows of energy, like just constantly up and down. And I've heard it said that for some people it's like on like a cycle of months up, like being up and then being down, or weeks and years maybe. But for me, it really is smaller increments. And sometimes it's like even daily. Like I'll know, for me, just the way that like my energy functions, I have a lot of energy in the morning. I get up, I love to meditate and work out, journal if I can. And because of my schedule now, like most likely I go to work. And then by the end of that, like I crash. I can't really do anything. I can hardly cook dinner after 5 o'clock. And that really isn't too different from how it was when I was not working, let's say, you know, regular, just 9 to 5 job. I mean, it was pretty much the same. I would, if I had a couple sessions in the middle of the day or spaced out, by the end of that, like I didn't do anything. And so to me, it's just, I've learned that I'm really efficient in the morning through like most of the midday. And then after, mainly after like 3 o'clock, I just can't really function. I do my best for those last couple hours, but after 3, I'm not really, it's hard. It's hard. And so for me, that's like what the balance has looked like, is like being okay with knowing, but now on a like creating kind of aspect, which I think is something a little different. I feel like that's where right now it's just, for me, the morning pages works because I just don't know. I just don't know
what's coming.
Yeah. And like you made this comment of saying how you don't know what?
You know, there's something there though.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. And I can't ignore it because there's also other things in my life going on right now.
Mm.
But I can't, but I also don't know, like, the only place I know where to start is to write,
Mm.
because I'm combating like all these other voices of like, oh, you've gone back to a 9 to 5. Like, why would
Mm.
you do that? And you moved across the state. Like, why would you do that? And it's just, I've been questioning myself a lot. And then there's these moments where I'm like, I just have to quiet all of that and look back at like the bigger picture of how things have unfolded and quiet those voices. Yeah. And you mentioned something about not knowing like where the rest of the year is gonna take you. And I sort of feel the same. Like I just don't, like, it's just, life feels a little weird.
Mm. Yeah, it's like, I think it takes a huge degree of trust, right?
Yeah.
Especially for you, like you've made this decision to move interstate, you know, across the country, taking this job, and you don't know where it's leading you, but you did know that you were trusting your heart in making that decision. Like, there's a great degree of trust, I think, especially as manifestors in those rest periods or those cycles where there's
Right.
anything that we're creating or initiating. We're just like trusting the next thing that's going to come
Yeah.
along, as it's mentioned, like you say, the small steps that we can take. And maybe even just those daily steps, like for you, the writing. For me, it's walking. Like, I love getting out and walking. That's where I clear my head, and that's where I have like clarity, a lot of clarity come in. Meditation, these different things, like perhaps these rituals and these practices are what can create the space or the opening for the
Mm-hmm.
next big thing to come along.
Yeah. It brings me back to one of the gene keys we've already explored,
Mm.
where like the power of the small step, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the stepping stones.
Yeah, the stepping stones, and how Richard Rudd says that like the most mundane things in life ultimately lead us to like that bigger dream or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I'm wondering because so the shadow of the 14th is compromise.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just going to open it up.
And I was kind of like reviewing it a little bit, and there is this one part where he mentions that compromise has become so embedded in our psyches that we don't even realize that we're doing it. And he continues to talk about compromise is a byproduct of living without a sense of personal freedom. It implies a lack of imagination and inability to believe in the power of your own uniqueness and individuality. And as we're talking, and I just, mentioned this word dream, I guess I'm wondering, like, for yourself, do you feel like there's anywhere in life that you're currently compromising that you wouldn't have, like, yeah.
Mm. Uh, where do I feel like I'm compromising? Well, it's funny because before you asked me that question, I was thinking about money, and I was
Mm,
thinking about how, in the eyes of society, perhaps I have made a compromise or a sacrifice in a way. I've sacrificed having a stable, steady income for the freedom that my heart desired to follow my dreams and to follow my passions and to live a creative life where I'm not being told what to do by anyone else, or not having to answer to other people so much. But that has come at a cost, because it has meant that I've not had the financial stability that I had working a 9 to 5 or working in other jobs. And so in a way, I feel like, and maybe compromise isn't the word, because if we're talking about compromise being compromising on our dreams, then I haven't made a compromise. I've just made a sacrifice according to what society would deem as successful, or society would deem as like prosperous, or whatever. But if I think about like where I'm actually compromising, I think right now it's just not believing in myself. I think that is where I'm making a compromise, is just feeding into stories and narratives of self-doubt. Because I know, like, even though I don't know what it is that the next big thing is going to be, or the next thing that I'm going to create that's like, that lights me up, that gives me that energy, that drive, that like excitement to just like get up first thing in the morning and just start my day. Like, even though I don't know what that thing is, or even if it will be a big thing, or if it's going to be a series of little things that lead to something bigger, I don't know. I have these inklings, I have these glimpses of what it is that I do want to create, that could be those small steps. They could be seen as those kind of small steps that I could take towards whatever calling is coming. But I'm compromising on that by doubting myself, by being afraid of putting myself out there, by being afraid of what other people will think. And I mean, I've come so far. Like, I have to give myself credit on how far I've come and how much I've let go of putting myself into a box and trying to just be one thing and confine myself to these identities. Like, we've talked about identity a lot over the series of our podcast episodes, but I still feel like I'm compromising on my power. I still feel like I'm not in my power when it comes to expressing myself, because there's still that doubt that gets in the way.
Yeah. One of the frequencies of the shadow, the reactive nature, I believe, is enslaved. And it almost, the way I'm hearing it, I feel like it might relate to that, in the sense of like, there's this like psychological or emotional enslavement that you're experiencing with continuing to like doubt, like being enslaved by doubt. And I don't know if you came across the post of from Jenna Zoe in My Human Design, and it said like, when manifestors are in ego, it said they hide out of fear of criticism or something, but basically they hide. And I was like, it's so true. It's so true, because it has taken me a bit to even share with people in conversation that you and I do a podcast.
Yeah, me too. Because it's different. It's something different. Yeah.
It's so different. It's honestly very specific. Well, I mean, if you've noticed, like, you guys listening notice, there's a thread of talking about life's experiences, but there's also like, we talk about human design and the gene keys in every podcast. It kind of is part of like one of the foundations of what this thing is creating, how it's going. And so I've been like, well, people don't really know about human design, or the people around me don't really know about human design. So I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to keep doing it because I love it. And, you know, we have a great time together. But being out here and being around new people, right? Because now I'm working with people again. Before I was just in my home, but, you know, my circle is very small. And so now I'm exposed to being around people again. And I've been slowly kind of putting it out there if ever we have a conversation. And today I told 2 people, I shared it with 2 people. And it's crazy because every time I share it, people are like, send me the link. I think I sent the link to 3 people last week. And these aren't 3 new people. These are like my very, very best friend who somehow, you know, mom life, she can't find the link. So I shared it with her. And two other people that I work with. And then today I shared it again. And yeah, I've had to sort of like work with like this doubting myself and what I can offer or what I'm here to create or, share. And I kind of feel like I got a little bit off tangent there, but
I think that was perfectly perfectly on tangent, because it's like one of the ways in which we keep ourselves small as manifestors. And we can also have so much compassion for ourselves for why we do this, because I mean, as children, we were these big energetic beings, and really powerful, and that was probably dimmed by well-meaning adults who didn't mean to make us small or to dim our light. And he even actually talks about this at the start. He talks about children and how
the school system,
and he kind of talks about how we're like children have these dreams, and it's almost like unlimited, the possibilities that you can dream up. And a lot of kids have these dreams of being movie stars or whatever it may be, being some kind of big expression of themselves. And then that's beaten out of us by the schooling system, by our caregivers, by society telling us that it's not possible, all of these outside noises, and then we give up on our dreams. So I feel like it's very relevant. Like, how do we keep ourselves small? How do you keep yourself small? I know you've shared about the podcast, or not mentioning. What other ways do you keep yourself small?
Well, I think I did it so long with like when I was more active in my private practice. I sort of just no, actually that's not correct. Because I didn't really want to be the one to market myself. That's just not the way I want to do things.
Okay, so explain that, because that's really interesting.
Like ideally the way I see it and what feels most correct for me is that my network of people, my community or whatever, just has its own beautiful way of orchestrating and working out to where I don't feel any pressure or need to try to market myself. I don't know, through anything really. Like that's how I see it ideally. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, that to me, like, well, I'm sorry, say that again.
The right opportunities just come to you through your network.
Yeah. So like if I were to compromise, my compromise would be that I would force myself or feel like I have to go and, purchase like a marketing thing or, put the boost my post on Instagram or I don't know, something like that, right? That would be compromise. And I'd be making that compromise out of a state of fear when it comes to like wealth and money. That's just flat out. And that's part of what this is about in some level. Because he even says that work can mean so many different things to so many different people. But traditionally, the way I've viewed work is like what you do and the money you get in return is like the exchange of money, right? People always say that, like, time is money and I'm exchanging my time for money, whatever. And there's so many different ways you can see it. But for me, like, that's what would be like I'd be compromising on my dream of having Source perfectly orchestrate the opportunities for me because I want to interject my will as a fear of not having or making enough money for myself.
Which is misaligned action.
Right. Right.
For both of us, yeah, because that feels the same for me. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to push myself out there and pitch myself in the way that, you know, we're often taught to, or the way that you see a lot of other business owners or entrepreneurs doing.
Mhm.
And I had someone say to me, a coach say to me, like, there is a lot of conditioning in the online business marketing
Yeah.
industry saying that this is the
Yeah.
one way to do it, and you need to, you know, do email marketing or whatever, or paid ads or affiliates or whatever things that people do. And it's really hard to know, like, what's a really natural way for me to do it when you're not seeing the results, when you're trying to do it naturally in an aligned way, which is what I'm doing at the moment. Is like I said, I'm not taking misaligned action, or I'm doing my best to not take misaligned action, but I'm not seeing any results. So it's like,
Yeah.
this is the trust piece, right?
Right.
This is the trust piece where if you just take the small steps that do feel aligned,
Yeah.
show up in a way that feels most natural, don't keep yourself small or hide, or, you know, work on learning to put yourself out there and be seen and recognize, then trusting that the right opportunities and the right ways of creating that wealth and that prosperity will come in time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
But
mean,
it's hard.
what?
Hard.
It is so hard because, like, even on the reverse side, right? Like, now I feel like there's just a lot of conditioning around work. Actually, to be completely honest, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about, like, what are the other kind of concepts and things that were, the gift of this is competence.
Oh yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
that?
So competence is the quality that accompanies a person who loves what they are doing. And this is what was coming up for me as you were sharing, because I feel, and I had a conversation about this, like, right when I decided, like, when all of this was coming about, that I'm going back to working in a facility and having a 9 to 5. And I was having a conversation with someone around the fact that, like, there seems to be now out on, like, the social media platforms, it's almost like it's been like a bad thing to work in a 9 to 5. Right? Like, everybody now has to be like an entrepreneur or have their own business and be creating these things and creating content and, you know, all this stuff, whatever. And it's fine. And I think it's great. Like, I went and tried to do those same things, and I really loved it. I really loved not working a 9 to 5. I really loved working with people, you know, virtually from my home. I mean, it served me in so many ways, so beautifully, for a period of time. And then it kind of came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready for something else. So I'm like, I'm, you know, this all came about, and I'm like, I'm now going to go do that. And it's okay. Like, for me, I feel like ultimately I'm still doing what I love. And I would want people to know that, just that, like, it's okay if you're going to go back working for somebody else, or if you're not going to be your own boss. I mean, are you going to go back to doing something that you love? It's in the structure of what you love. You just might not be the one that's, like, in charge of it all. And if that feels okay for you, then do it. Like, I don't know. I just, you know, I've obviously had to grapple back and forth with the fact that I feel like, oh, what did I do? But ultimately, I'm, like, reminded of how beautiful it is that I am back. and working around other people. And it just doesn't get more simple than that. I love what I do, and I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do. It's just the structure is just a little different. And so in me sharing all of this, I've kind of recognized that like life also has phases. And it's okay if you're in like a high productive phase. And it's okay if you're in a low productive phase, or if you're like not creating as much, or if you're like really creating, or if your entire life changes and now you work a 9 to 5 instead of a couple hours each day. Like it's just all okay and really relative to like where you're at in life in that moment. And so I don't know, that's what I thought of when I read the word competence, because I don't know, I feel pretty competent.
Well, yeah, exactly. And who are we to know where it's taking us, where that season of our life is taking us? But
right.
I think I've shared this with you before. One of the feelings I've got from your situation is that it's revealing to you some of your competence, some of your skills, some of your natural inherent talents, which is going to, of course, contribute to the next phase of your life or the next season. Like it's all building onto the next. Everything we do in life is always building onto the next. There's no wasted opportunities, no wasted time. We're always learning and evolving and growing. And so who knows where this is going to take you? Who knows where anything is ever going to take us?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like letting go of the idea of how we think it should be.
Right.
Because of the conditioning that we're seeing around us or that we've received. Like it's almost, I mean, 10 years ago, it would have been a lot more unheard of to leave your job and become an entrepreneur and work for yourself. And then now, like you said, it's almost the flip. We're seeing the reverse. We're seeing like everyone saying, oh, you need to, or you should want to not work a 9 to 5 or not want to work in the system. But like if you're enjoying what you do, then like who cares? Who cares what anyone else thinks or says? And this is where I feel like it's just so important to come back to yourself and come back to what feels like the right thing in this phase of life that you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the other, like the last bit that came to me was just how much conditioning there is right now around this idea of work and its correlation with like prosperity and wealth. And it just sort of seems like, I know Richard Rudd talks about like how school has been a big shadow expression for children. Like it's, the system, like you sit down and you learn these tests and you memorize these things, and that's kind of like bled into the reason why people just compromise on their dreams, is a lot of people go and they work in the system and they found a job and the job pays their bills, but then they don't really go for what their heart truly desires because they can't get out of that somehow for whatever reason. And I don't know, something about like, okay, yeah, but what about adults and social media? We might not be in school, but I feel like there's so much conditioning on social media to where it's like, okay, now you have to go find your purpose, or you have to go create something, or be an entrepreneur, or be a stay-at-home mom and cook. And it's just like that's a whole nother conversation, but it's just like I even like reacted. I was going to send it to you and maybe I still will, but I came across this post of somebody sort of sharing like, a woman and being a mom, and being out in like the woods or caring for her children and cooking and doing all of these like beautiful, fulfilling this beautiful role of being a mother or a wife or whatever. And it just almost felt like it was in some way shaming somebody who wants to work, who wants to quote unquote be a, what do they call it, a boss babe or whatever. And I'm just like, I had a reaction, and sometimes this happens, and I feel it, and I go to my notes and I go on a rant as if I was like responding to this. And I just keep it in my notes till I go back and look at it and kind of see like, what was I thinking in that moment? Like, what was really trying to come out? And it's just this idea of like, everybody just trying social media. I'm not going to say everybody. It seems to me that sometimes social media is like this second indoctrination of like the way you should do things. So as children, we had school, and maybe that cut us off from our like dreams. And now as adults, it's social media and like every in which way you should live your life. And so we don't really notice, but we compromise ourselves in the smallest ways to try to fit into this mold of doing something for X amount of purposes or whatever. And it's just like, dude, Jill, if you want to be the mom that walks barefoot in the forest with her children naked on her boobs, like, then do it. But why would it not be okay if somebody wants to do the complete opposite?
It's just another form of homogenization, putting us into a box and saying that there's one way to do things and one way to do life. And it's like, it is so important for us to know what is right for us and what's natural, so that we can, amongst all of the noise, amongst all of the chaos, discern what is true and authentic to us, because there are going to be so many voices and conflicting ideas. And like, that's beautiful if that person who's sharing their motherhood journey and how they're doing it can inspire someone else to be like, oh, that feels like something that I want to do, and that feels authentic to me, and that feels like something that I would really enjoy. But it's not correct for everyone to do things the way that one person is doing it. It's just not. And this is like, I wanted to say before, what came to me is that human design is, I think, in one way, a really beautiful map to show us what's true and authentic to us. But on the other hand, I think it can also be a trap that can homogenize us and put us into a box if we are looking at it from such a black and white perspective. Like, manifestors aren't meant to work 9 to 5s, because like, maybe not long term, maybe that's not our path forever, but who's to say that taking some opportunity is not going to lead you to what your destiny is as a manifestor? Like, it's a stepping stone. It's something that's leading you towards what you came here to do. Like, again, how are we to know this? So I just feel like everyone's just getting so attached to things having to be so dogmatic and so now I'm getting frustrated myself.
Well, I'll just say this, that the city of the 14th gate is Bounteousness. And sorry, I had one of those moments where I'm like processing, but I go blank, so I don't have any words. That hasn't really happened on the podcast. So if you're listening on Spotify and there's just a pause, that's what that was. To like what you were saying of just all of these different expressions. I mean, we can look at Bounteousness, and I don't really recall everything he was saying, because as you know, like, or if anybody has realized, like, the cities are sometimes real dense, and they're just like, I don't know, sometimes on an intellectual level, it's, I don't know, it's hard to take in. not hard, but it's just interesting. I don't know. I can't even find the word to describe it. But what I'm saying is that bounciness maybe doesn't even have to be limited to like the amount of resources there are, whether it's financial resources, physical, material, food, whatever. Like, what if bounciness is also just the amount of individual expressions that any one person can embody? Like, what if it's just also an expression of like how vast a human being truly is?
Yeah. Which is why we can never find one box to fit ourselves into.
Yeah.
Because we are so unlimited, limitless in our expression and in the possibilities of how our unique energy could be expressed. There's infinite possibilities.
Yeah. And it just made me think of like, because you know, I don't know how closely I was reading the description of it in the human design book of it being the gate of power skills. And I read it a couple times, but I just didn't really know how to take it in. And what's coming to me now is like the 2140 something that connects, like I have it. It's a channel that I have. It's like the manifestor channel that connects the heart to the throat. It's like the 2145 maybe, or something like that.
Oh yeah, 2145.
Yeah. And the money line they call it, but it's also like it's just a gate of resources, a channel of resources. And so in this in this tail end of the conversation around bountiness, what if we were able to expand our sort of conceptualization of like work? I don't know how deep that really goes. That's just what came to me. You know, like, what if our resources started just also coming from other places? What if work was the thing that you do for what, I don't know, like work for me right now, it's like I'm doing what I love. I can't even try to describe it in any other way because that is what it is for me. But I'm just wondering if what the way in which we gather our resources over time, if that changes, and so that like maybe work isn't the only place where you get the money or the prosperity.
And also the resources aren't just focused around money. Like there's so many different types of resources, and can we redefine, first of all, what work means to us, and second of all, what bounteousness or what prosperity looks like to us? Can we redefine that, what success is, and not just place so much emphasis on money being the only resource and the only way in which we can be prosperous? Is that kind of what you were trying to say?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
And I have one last thing that I want to mention is he talks about flexibility as well. And I mean, just give me a moment because I want to find this if I can. Might not be able to. Oh, here we go. Competence carries within it efficiency, enthusiasm, flair, and flexibility. And I just wanted to mention something. Oh, here we go. Finally, the 14th gift has great flexibility. You cannot be rigid and competent at the same time. And so my thoughts on this was that it's not just about what you do or like having a specific job or role that you play. It's applying your enthusiasm, your energy, your skills, your talents, your competence, all of the things that make you unique, your enthusiasm, did I mention that, to whatever it is that you're doing. So it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be one thing, because you're able to just bring the energy of who you are and that life force to whatever it is that you're doing, and that can be work. And so I guess this has brought a bit of clarity to me, and my predicament is that it doesn't matter what I'm doing, as long as I'm working on just being the most me that I can be and showing up the most authentically and just doing whatever it is that I feel like I'm excited about or that I want to do in the moment, then it doesn't matter what container or what the job or what the work is, that it's just about being and showing up as ourselves, because only we can do that in our own unique way.
I've often heard, like, it's not what you do, but how you do it.
What a fun gene key. I like this one.
I did too.
Even though I don't have it defined, neither do you. Do you?
No.
No.
And so last bit here I'll share is, like, I feel as if when we don't have it defined, it almost feels, again, like there's more for us to dive into, because it's been a journey. And not that the definition, there isn't a journey with the definition, but the gift is like, it's just there. It's more consistent. It's like, especially, the two being a natural, it's like you can't really explain how you do it. So for us sitting here trying to explain like what comes natural, which is defined, it sometimes almost feels like there's like this, like, I don't know how to explain it, and so the undefined, and it's so interesting because I'm pretty sure, like, we both had we're talking about in the very beginning of all of this, how we've only really explored the define, like the definition in our chart, because it's most, it's relatable to us. But really I'm starting to like find a lot of fascination in the undefined.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like we're less attached to the idea of how these energies present because they are less consistent.
Yeah. Cool. So fun. All right, everyone. Well, if you have the 14th gate in your chart, let us know. And if you don't, we'd love to hear your feedback and insights and how it all relates to you. So can leave us a comment, mention us in Instagram, anything you like.
Thank you for joining us. Thanks for watching.
Take care.